Hey, what's going on, everyone? Welcome back to another episode of Star Wars Coffee. Where in today's episode, we're going to be taking a look at Oscar Isaac talking about his potential return to Star Wars. That's today here on Star Wars Coffee. The sequel trilogy is over, and if you ask me, we're in that same type of period right after 2005's Revenge of the Sith came out, ending the George Lucas era of live-action Star Wars films. And if you recall, if you're old enough to recall, then the whole narrative of Star Wars fans was the prequels were not well done. The prequels had bad dialogue. Why did Attack of the Clones have to just focus on a love story between two actors with no, compatibility, no charisma, no chemistry? Why this? Why that? Hayden Christensen stinks. And now, of course I don't believe any of those things, but now we are in the same portion of what happens after every trilogy that Star Wars has done since the original trilogy, which is now the sequel trilogy's done, and we're hearing the exact same things from them. Disney's Star Wars is a joke. There was no storyline. Blah, blah, blah. J.J. Abrams, Rian Johnson stinks. Rian Johnson should not have done a Star Wars movie, that is true. But my goodness, it's even worse this time around, because even some of the actors just don't care. Like, why would you hire these people who don't care? At least in the prequels, when they were talking about it, they were proud of what they had done. They worked with George Lucas, for crying out loud. Of course they should be proud of what they have done. These people are in Star Wars. This is a movie that's literally going to be remembered for ever. And now we have certain actors who are running away from the role and not even taking the legacy of this seriously, because these movies mean a lot to a lot of people. And normally I don't typically get agitated when talking about an actor saying something negative about the movie, but even Hayden Christensen, the man who got completely bashed for doing his job and playing Anakin, and even he wouldn't talk bad about the movies. But now you have extremely successful movies with, Oscar Isaac is who we're talking about today, just kind of bashing it. He says, Oscar Isaac says he'll only return to Star Wars if I need another house or something. So, IndieWire reports that after years entrenched in big-budget spectacle from Star Wars The Last Jedi and The Rise of Skywalker to The Force Awakens and Dune, and lending his voices to the animated series Star Wars Resistance, Oscar Isaac is finally getting back to his art film roots. He'll soon be returning to the card counter as a gambler and former soldier who sets out to help a young man seeking revenge on a mutual enemy from their past. Teasing the upcoming film, which was shut down by a pandemic and midway in March, only 5 days left of filming, Oscar Isaac appeared on the Deadline panel where of course the subject of Star Wars popped up, especially regarding his possible return to the franchise. The answer is likely no, which makes sense given the character arc as Poe Dameron was wrapped up with the sunset of the Skywalker saga in the last film, directed by J.J. Abrams and released in 2019. He said, I enjoyed the challenge of those films and working with a very large group of incredible artists, actors, prop makers, set designers, and all of that was really fun. Isaac said, but there's a caveat. It's not really what I set out to do. What I set out to do was make handmade movies, and to work with people that inspire me. Paul, things that he makes me, it's in my DNA. I'm not alone. Every actor of a certain generation, there are films that made them who they are, so that's certainly my case. It feels like, for me, a more personal turning point, and that's as far as I'm concerned. It has nothing to do with the finished product. It's the process of doing it. So, I had no issue with what he was saying up until, but, every time you say, oh, it was great, I got to do all of these things, but it's not really what I set out to do. So, me reading it might not give you the tone of what he said. So here's the way he said it, and when he talks about returning to Star Wars, maybe if I need another house or something, he just kind of blows it off last, ha 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 ha, because he doesn't want to talk about it. It's kind of like Harrison Ford, except Harrison Ford still cares about the character enough to have reprised his role and done it, and protect the character and the legacy, because Harrison Ford knows that he's going to be remembered mostly for Star Wars and Indiana Jones. And if he can protect the legacy of those characters, then he protects his legacy as an actor. And Oscar Isaac, much younger than Harrison Ford, is kind of just not understanding this as well. So take a look here.
Oscar, I just wanted to pick up on something you said earlier, kind of referencing these, huge franchise movies that you've been in, obviously enormously successful. But does it make a nice change to go back to something kind of more indie, like The Card Counter? Do those kind of projects get you more excited now?
Yes.
Yes,
it's I enjoyed the challenge of those films and working with a very large group of incredible artists and actors and prop makers and set designers and all that, and it was really fun, but it's not really what I set out to do. What I really was set out to do was to make handmade movies and to work with people that inspired me. I mean, Paul's movies, the things that he's made, it's in my DNA.
Cheeky question, but does that reduce the chances of a return for Poe Dameron one day?
Probably, but who knows? I need another house or something.
So I really don't like anybody trashing their own work when a lot of people enjoyed it. Like, why would you want to do that? I get that there's a lot of the people who don't like these films. It's like when you look at a review for anything online. The only people who review things either hated it or loved it. So you either see a 5-star review or a 1-star review. Very few do you see those people who review every product who's like, oh yes, this is 2.5, 3. That doesn't really happen that often. It's either 5 or 1. And the people who give a 5 don't comment on it. They just hit the thumbs up or the 5 stars and move on. The people who didn't like it will voice their opinion until the sun goes down. And that's what's happening, and I think that's what these people hear. And so they're like, oh, well, then I have no responsibility to this. Which is, I think, just, it's awful. And Poe Dameron's even continuing on. He's getting books and comics, and I don't understand why now his likeness is Poe Dameron. They're still using it on the cover of these new books and comics. And yet he's still kind of just saying, well, I'm done with that unless I need another house. So now, if he ever comes back and he's going to have to fake this enthusiasm, I will be pointing to this. And I will be telling you whether or not I feel that his enthusiasm is genuine or not. So, I just don't like this. So let me know what you guys think about this. I don't care whether or not you like the sequel trilogy or the prequels. I think my explanation is correct, that this is the same thing that happened after the prequel trilogy came out, and now it's the same thing that happens after the sequel. So my conclusion would be that in 10 years, 15 years, the people who like these movies are going to come around to them, and the people who didn't will come around to them more like they did with the prequel trilogy. But let me know what you guys think about that in the comment section down below. Thank you guys for watching. May God bless you and the Force be with you always. If you enjoyed this episode, and frankly, even if you didn't, don't forget to subscribe.
Do it.
And if you want to help spread the word, please give this video a thumbs up and tell your friends to subscribe. Please check out the official Star Wars Coffee merchandise, and don't forget to check out all of the content playlists on this channel, including The Rise of Skywalker, The Mandalorian, and much more.